Imani's hand froze on the doorknob of the supply closet when she heard the voice behind her, cold, sharp, dripping with disdain. "You, girl, pack your things and get out of my son's house." Her heart hammered against her ribs. She turned slowly, her worn sneakers squeaking against the marble floor, to face Mrs. Vittoria Leone. The woman stood in the hallway like a queen surveying her kingdom, diamonds glinting at her throat, her silk dress probably worth more than Imani made in 6 months. "Mrs. Leone, Imani started, her voice steady, despite the fear crawling up her spine. "I don't care what excuse you have," Vittoria cut her off, her Italian accent thick with contempt. "I've seen how you look at my son. Girls like you always have an agenda. You think cleaning his floors gives you access to his world? You're fired." Imani's fingers tightened around the handle of her cleaning caddy. She needed this job, desperately. Her little brother's medication, her grandmother's mortgage, everything depended on the paycheck from this house. "With all due respect, ma'am, only Mr. Leone can—" "My son does what I tell him to do," Vittoria snapped, stepping closer. "Now get out before I have security remove you." That's when Imani heard it, the sound of dress shoes against marble, measured and deliberate. The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Mother." One word, just one word, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Elias Leone appeared at the top of the grand staircase, and Imani's breath caught despite herself. He was in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car, his dark hair perfectly styled, his jaw set in a line that made grown men tremble. Even from across the foyer, his presence was overwhelming, dangerous, powerful, magnetic. His steel-grey eyes locked onto his mother, then shifted to Imani. Something flickered in his gaze, something she couldn't quite read. What did you just say to her? If you want to discover how this confrontation unfolded and what happened next between Imani and Elias, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more stories like this one to life. 3 weeks earlier, Imani had stood outside the towering iron gates of the Leone estate, questioning every decision that had led her to this moment. The house, no, mansion, rose before her like something out of a movie. White stone, endless windows, grounds that seemed to stretch for miles. She clutched her worn purse tighter, suddenly very aware of the holes in her jeans and the way her thrift store blouse hung a bit too loose on her frame. "You're the new girl?" A woman in her 50s appeared at the gate, her uniform crisp and professional. "I'm Rosa, head of household staff. Mr. Leone expects perfection, you understand?" Imani nodded. "Yes, ma'am, I won't disappoint you." She couldn't. This job paid 3 times what she'd made at the diner, and it came with health insurance. Health insurance she desperately needed for her grandmother's heart condition and her brother Marcus's asthma medication. At 26, she'd been working since she was 14, juggling school and jobs, sacrificing her own dreams to keep her family afloat after her parents died. This was her chance. Finally. Rosa led her through a service entrance, explaining the rules in rapid-fire Spanish and English. "Mr. Leone's private wing is off-limits unless specifically requested. He works from home most days. You'll rarely see him, but when you do, eyes down, no questions, no conversation. Capisce?" "I understand." "Good. His mother visits frequently. Mrs. Vittoria Leone. She's—" Rosa paused, choosing her words carefully. "Traditional, very particular about who works in her son's home." Imani caught the warning in her tone, but didn't comment. She'd dealt with prejudice before. She could handle it again. The first 2 weeks passed in a blur of marble floors and crystal chandeliers, of learning which rooms to clean when and how Mr. Leone liked his coffee if she was ever asked to bring it. She worked quietly, efficiently, trying to remain invisible. But Elias Leone noticed everything. She felt his eyes on her the first time they crossed paths in the library. She'd been dusting the shelves, reaching for a high corner, when she'd sensed his presence. She'd turned to find him standing in the doorway, a phone pressed to his ear, his grey eyes tracking her movements with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Continue," he'd said into the phone, his voice low and commanding. "Continue." But his gaze never left her. Imani had turned back to her work, her hands trembling slightly. She'd heard the rumors about Elias Leone, Whispered conversations between the other staff about his business dealings, about the men in black SUVs who came and went at odd hours, about the way even hardened criminals paled when his name was mentioned. The second time she saw him, she was in the kitchen at dawn, preparing to start her shift. She hadn't expected anyone to be awake, but there he was, standing by the window in sweatpants and a t-shirt, a cup of espresso in his hand. For a moment, he looked almost normal, human, tired. "I'm sorry, Mr. Leone," she'd stammered, backing toward the door. "I didn't know you were—" "Stay." He hadn't turned around. "You're Imani, yes? Imani Foster." Her heart had lurched. He knew her name. "Yes, sir. Rosa says you're reliable, that you arrive early, stay late, never complain." He took a sip of his espresso. "Why?" The question caught her off guard. "Sir, why do you work so hard?" He finally turned to face her, and the morning light caught the sharp planes of his face, the exhaustion etched around his eyes. "Most people do the minimum required. You do more." Imani hesitated. She didn't want to share her story, her struggles. But something about the genuine curiosity in his voice made her answer honestly. "I have people depending on me," she said quietly. "My grandmother raised me and my little brother after our parents died. She's sick now. Marcus is 17, wants to go to college. This job. It means we eat. It means his medication is covered. It means everything." Elias studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded once. "I understand loyalty to family. It's rare." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. The moment shattered. His face hardened back into the mask of the ruthless boss everyone feared. "Get back to work," he said. But his tone wasn't cruel. It was almost protective. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, their interactions had been brief, but charged with something Imani couldn't name. A look that lasted a second too long, his hand steadying her elbow when she'd nearly slipped on the freshly waxed floor. The way he'd left her envelope with a generous bonus on her cleaning cart with a note that simply said, "For your brother's college fund." She'd cried in the supply closet that day. And now, standing in the hallway with his mother's venom still ringing in her ears, Imani watched as Elias descended the stairs with the predatory grace of a panther. "I asked you a question, Mother." His voice was ice. "What did you say to Miss Foster?" Vittoria's confidence wavered for just a fraction of a second. "Elias, Caro, I was simply—" "You were firing my employee without my permission." He reached the bottom of the stairs, his presence filling the space. "In my house, without consulting me. She's just a maid. She is a member of my household staff, and you will show her respect." Each word was carefully measured, deadly quiet. "Or you can leave." The silence that followed was deafening. Imani held her breath, unable to believe what she was hearing. No one spoke to Vittoria Leone like that. No one. "You would choose this. This girl over your own mother." Vittoria's face flushed with rage and humiliation. Elias's jaw tightened. "I choose to protect what's mine, and everyone under this roof is under my protection." His eyes flickered to Imani, and something passed between them. A promise, a claim. Everyone. The tension in the Leone mansion after that confrontation was thick enough to cut with a knife. Imani tried to make herself even more invisible than before, but it was impossible. Elias had drawn a line in the sand, and she was on his side of it, whether she wanted to be or not. 2 days after the incident with his mother, she was cleaning his office when he appeared in the doorway. "Leave it," he said, gesturing to the half-dusted bookshelf. "We need to talk." Her stomach dropped. "Mr. Leone, if this is about your mother, I never meant to cause—" "Sit." He pointed to one of the leather chairs facing his massive desk. Imani's hands trembled as she set down her cleaning supplies and perched on the edge of the chair. Elias moved to his desk but didn't sit. Instead, he leaned against it, arms crossed, studying her with those penetrating grey eyes. "My mother will not bother you again," he said finally. "I've made that very clear to her. Sir, I don't want to cause problems in your family." "My family has enough problems without your help," he said dryly. "My mother's. Prejudices are her own issue to work through, not yours." Imani nodded, not trusting herself to speak. However, Elias continued, his tone shifting, the situation has made me realize something. Your position here makes you vulnerable, not just to my mother's machinations, but to— He paused, choosing his words carefully. To those who might seek to use you against me. I don't understand. He moved closer, and suddenly the office felt much smaller. I have enemies, Miss Foster. Dangerous people who would hurt anyone I care about to get to me, and I've made it very clear that I won't tolerate anyone mistreating you. The implication hung in the air between them. He cared about her. He'd admitted it without actually saying the words. I can quit, Imani said quickly. I don't want to put myself or my family in danger. I'll find another— No! The word was sharp, final. You're not quitting, but we need to take precautions. Over the next hour, Elias explained the new security measures. A driver would take her to and from work. Security cameras would be installed at her grandmother's house. Her brother would have an escort to and from school. This is too much, Imani protested. I can't accept— You don't have a choice. His voice softened slightly. Please, Imani, let me protect you. The use of her first name sent a shiver down her spine. Why? She whispered. Why does this matter so much to you? Elias was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with an honesty that shocked her. My father built this empire on blood and fear. He taught me that caring for anyone was weakness, that loyalty was bought with money and maintained through violence. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of vulnerability. But you work 3 jobs for your family. You sacrifice everything for people who need you. That's real loyalty, real strength. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the faint scar above his left eyebrow. How you remind me that there's still good in this world, Ifani said quietly, and I will do whatever it takes to protect that, to protect you. Before Imani could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgency that made his entire body tense. He glanced at the screen and cursed in Italian. Stay here, he commanded, already moving toward the door. Don't leave this office until I come back. What's wrong? My warehouse is by the docks. There's been an attack. His face had transformed back into the cold mask of the Mafia boss. Rival family, they're sending a message. Fear spiked through her. You're going there? Now? What if— He paused in the doorway, looking back at her. The concern in her voice seemed to surprise him, soften something in his expression. Will you worry about me, Imani? The question was almost tender. Of course I will, she admitted before she could stop herself. Something blazed in his eyes, possession, promise, something fierce and protective. Then I'll make sure I come back. He was gone before she could say another word, leaving her alone in his office with her heart racing and the terrifying realization that she was starting to care far too much about a man she could never truly have. Hours passed. Imani couldn't leave. He'd told her to stay, and the authority in his voice had been absolute. She paced his office, watching the sun set through the floor-to-ceiling windows, imagining all the terrible things that could be happening at the docks. When darkness fell, Rosa found her there. You should go home, the older woman said gently. The driver is waiting. But Mr. Leone said, he may not be back until very late, or— Rosa's face was grave. These situations, they're unpredictable. The unspoken words hung heavy. He might not come back at all. Imani reluctantly agreed to leave, but she couldn't shake the sick feeling in her stomach. She barely slept that night, jumping at every sound, checking her phone constantly for news she wouldn't receive. When she arrived at the mansion the next morning, the house was in chaos. Staff rushed back and forth, voices tense and urgent. Rosa grabbed her arm the moment she walked in. He's in the medical room, she said. He was shot. He's alive, but— Imani didn't hear the rest. She was already running. She found Elias in a room she'd never entered before, a fully equipped medical suite with a doctor and 2 nurses tending to him. He was shirtless, blood staining the bandages wrapped around his left shoulder, his face pale but his eyes alert and furious. Everyone out, he commanded when he saw her in the doorway. The medical staff exchanged glances but obeyed. They knew better than to argue when their boss used that tone. When they were alone, Imani approached slowly, her eyes fixed on the blood seeping through the white gauze. "You're hurt," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's nothing. Went straight through. No major damage. You were shot." She couldn't stop the tears that spilled down her cheeks. "You could have died." Ilyas's expression shifted from anger to something softer, almost wondering. He reached out with his good arm and caught her wrist, pulling her closer. "You're crying," he said, as if this was the most astonishing thing that had ever happened to him. "You're crying for me." "Of course I am," she sobbed. "Do you think I'm made of stone, that I can just watch you walk into danger and not care?" His thumb brushed away her tears with surprising gentleness. "No one has cried for me since I was a child," he murmured. "No one." "Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people." A sound escaped him, half laugh, half something more pained. "Come here." He guided her to sit on the edge of the medical bed, careful not to jostle his injury. His hand moved to cup her face, his grey eyes searching hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "And I need you to listen carefully." Imani nodded, unable to speak. "I am not a good man. The things I've done, the blood on my hands, you can't even imagine. My world is dark and violent and unforgiving." His jaw clenched. "But when I look at you, I see light. I see everything I don't deserve but desperately want. Ilyas, I'm in love with you, Imani Foster." The words were raw, honest, devastating. "I've been in love with you since the day you told me about your family, about your sacrifice, about your loyalty. And I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking anyway. Stay with me. Let me protect you. Let me—" She kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't thought through, but she couldn't listen to another word, without showing him, without telling him with her actions what she couldn't quite put into words yet. He froze for half a second, then kissed her back with a hunger that made her dizzy. His good arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer, and she was careful, so careful not to hurt his injured shoulder, even as she poured everything into that kiss. Her fear, her relief, her own terrifying feelings that she'd been trying so hard to deny. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ilyas rested his forehead against hers. "Say it," he whispered. "Please, Cara Mia, say it." "I love you too," she breathed. "I know I shouldn't. I know it's impossible. But I do. I love you, Ilyas." The smile that crossed his face was beautiful and rare and completely genuine. But outside the medical room, in the shadows of the hallway, someone watched through the crack in the door and reached for their phone to make a call that would change everything. The next 2 weeks existed in a bubble that Imani knew couldn't last forever. Ilyas recovered quickly from his gunshot wound. Too quickly, his doctor warned, but he refused to stay bedridden. Instead, he worked from home more frequently, which meant more stolen moments with Imani. A touch as she passed him in the hallway. Whispered conversations in his office after the rest of the staff had gone home. Long talks about their lives, their dreams, their fears. "Tell me about your parents," Ilyas said one evening as they sat in his private library, her tucked against his good side on the leather sofa. Imani was quiet for a moment, memories washing over her. "They died in a car accident when I was 16 and Marcus was 7, a drunk driver." She felt Ilyas's arm tighten around her. "My grandmother took us in, but she was already on a fixed income. I had to drop out of school, get my GED, work to help support us. Every dream I had, college, traveling, everything, it just stopped mattering. All that mattered was keeping my family together. You gave up everything for them, wouldn't you?" She looked up at him. "For the people you love?" "I would kill for the people I love," he said simply. "I have killed for them." It should have scared her. Maybe it did, a little, but she also understood the fierce protectiveness behind those words. She felt it herself. "My father died when I was 19, Ilyas continued, staring into the fireplace. "Heart attack, they said. But I've always wondered if it was poison. He had many enemies. That's why you took over so young. I had no choice. In our world, weakness is death. I had to become harder, crueler than anyone else to survive." His voice dropped. "I've done terrible things, Imani. Things that keep me awake at night. things I can never take back. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. We're all shaped by our circumstances, but we don't have to be defined by them forever. He looked at her with something like wonder. How can you be so forgiving? Because I see who you are now. The man who protects his staff, who supports my brother's education, who holds me like I'm something precious. She touched his face gently. That's the man I love. Elias pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. You're too good for me. Then be better for me. It was a promise and a challenge, and she felt him accept both in the way he held her tighter. But paradise never lasts in the criminal underworld. 3 days later, Imani was leaving the mansion for the day when she noticed a black sedan following the car Elias had assigned to drive her home. She mentioned it to the driver, Giovanni, one of Elias's most trusted men, and watched his face harden. We're being tailed, he confirmed, his hand moving to something under his jacket. Hold on. What followed was straight out of an action movie. Giovanni's evasive driving, the screeching tires, the gunshots that shattered the back window. Imani screamed as Giovanni pushed the car to dangerous speeds, taking sharp turns through the city streets. Call Mr. Leone, Giovanni barked, tossing her his phone. Speed dial 1. Tell him code red at our location. With shaking hands, Imani made the call. Elias answered on the first ring. What's wrong? His voice was sharp, instantly alert. We're being chased. Someone's shooting at us. The sound of shattering glass cut her off as another bullet found its mark. Where are you? Elias demanded, and she could hear him shouting orders in the background. Giovanni rattled off an intersection. Seconds later, Elias's voice came back, deadly calm. I'm 10 minutes out. Giovanni, get her to the safe house on 5th. I'm sending backup, and Imani. His voice softened just slightly. Stay down. Stay safe. I'm coming. The line went dead. The next 10 minutes were the longest of Imani's life. Giovanni drove like a demon, his gun ready, taking turns that made her stomach lurch. They finally pulled into an underground garage where 3 more black SUVs appeared like magic, forming a protective convoy around them. Giovanni practically carried her from the car to an elevator that took them to a penthouse apartment she'd never known existed. As soon as the door closed behind them, she started shaking uncontrollably. You're safe now, Giovanni assured her. Mr. Leone will be here any moment. True to his word, Elias burst through the door less than 5 minutes later, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. But when he saw Imani standing there, pale and trembling but unharmed, something in him cracked. Leave us, he told Giovanni, never taking his eyes off her. The moment they were alone, he crossed the space between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms with a desperation that took her breath away. If anything had happened to you, he breathed against her hair, his whole body tense. If they had hurt you... I'm okay, she whispered, even though she was still shaking. Giovanni protected me. I'm okay. He pulled back just enough to cup her face, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones as if memorizing every detail. This is my fault. They went after you because of me, because everyone knows now that you're mine. Who were they? The Rossini family. They've been trying to move into my territory for months. This was retaliation for the docks. His jaw clenched, and a message. They wanted me to know that they could get to you. Fear spiked through her again. What are you going to do? End this permanently. The cold promise in his voice sent shivers down her spine. No one threatens what's mine and lives to do it again. Elias... No. He cut her off, his eyes blazing with an intensity she'd never seen before. You don't get to ask me to show mercy. Not about this. Not about you. He kissed her then, hard and possessive, claiming her mouth like he was trying to prove something to her, to himself, to the universe that had dared to put her in danger. When he finally pulled away, they were both breathing hard. I need to tell you something, Imani said quietly. Something I should have said before, but I was afraid. Elias's expression shifted to concern. What is it? My grandmother. She's not just sick with a heart condition. She has congestive heart failure, advanced stage. Tears pricked her eyes. The doctors say she has maybe a year, possibly less. And Marcus, he doesn't know yet. I haven't told him because he's so close to graduation and I don't want to—" Her voice broke, and Elias pulled her close again. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was gentle, all the anger drained away. "Because you've already done so much. The bonus, the security, everything. I didn't want you to think I was using you, or that I was looking for—" "Stop!" He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Do you know what it means to me that you've never asked me for anything? That every gift I give you, you try to refuse? That you work yourself to exhaustion rather than take advantage of our relationship? That's not why I'm with you. I know. That's precisely why I love you." He brushed a tear from her cheek. "Let me help. Please. The best cardiologist in the country is a friend. I'll have him see your grandmother tomorrow." "Elias, I can't afford—" "You're not paying for anything ever again. It wasn't a request. Your family is my family now. Your burdens are mine to carry. That's what love means, Kara. Let me protect you. Let me care for you. Let me prove that I can be the man you believe I am." Imani's tears fell freely now, but they were tears of relief, of gratitude, of overwhelming emotion. She'd been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders for so long, and here was this powerful, dangerous man offering to share that load. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the safe house, while outside, Elias's men prepared for war. Because while Imani had found sanctuary in his arms, he was about to show the Rossini family, and anyone else who might be watching, exactly what happened to people who threatened Elias Leone's woman. The cost would be high, the violence would be brutal, but for her, he would burn the entire world down and rebuild it from the ashes. The war came fast and brutal. For the next 3 days, Imani barely saw Elias. He kept her at the safe house with round-the-clock security, while he orchestrated his response to the Rossini family's attack. When he did visit, it was late at night, and he looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his jaw tight with tension. "It's almost over," he told her on the third night, sitting on the edge of the bed where she'd been trying to sleep. "One more move, and they'll have no choice but to negotiate. Have you slept at all?" She reached out to touch his face, feeling the stubble that had grown in. "I'll sleep when you're safe." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "When this is done, I'm taking you away, somewhere quiet, somewhere they can't find us. And my family? They'll come too, all of us, away from this city, this life, at least for a while." He pulled her into his arms. "I promise you, Imani, this won't be forever. I'll find a way out." She wanted to believe him, but she also knew that men like Elias didn't just walk away from their empires. The next morning, everything changed. Imani woke to the sound of her phone ringing, an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Miss Foster." The voice was smooth, cultured, and completely unfamiliar. "My name is Antonio Rossini. I believe you know why I'm calling." Her blood turned to ice. "How did you get this number?" "I have resources, just as your lover does. But unlike him, I'm reasonable. I'd like to propose a trade." "I'm not making any deals with you. Not even to save your brother's life?" The world tilted on its axis. "What?" Marcus Foster, 17 years old, senior at Lincoln High School, currently sitting in his second period chemistry class. Antonio's voice was pleasant, conversational. "I have 3 men positioned outside his school. 1 word from me and they take him. And I promise you, Miss Foster, what we'll do to him will haunt Elias Leone for the rest of his life." Imani couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Don't you dare, here's my offer. You leave Leone, you disappear from his life completely. In return, your brother stays safe. Your grandmother receives the medical care she needs. You get to keep working, keep living, just without him. He'll never agree to this." "That's why you won't tell him." Antonio's voice hardened. "You'll break his heart, Miss Foster. You'll make him believe you never loved him, that you were just using him for his money and protection. You'll be cruel, and then you'll vanish. And if I don't, then Marcus dies. Slowly, while you and Leone listen to every second of it. Do we have an understanding?" Tears streamed down her face. How do I know you'll keep your word? You don't. But you know I'll keep my other promise if you refuse. You have until sunset tonight to decide. And Miss Foster. He paused. If you tell Leon about this call, if you try to warn him, my men take your brother immediately. Are we clear? Yes. The word was barely a whisper. The line went dead. Imani sat there for a long moment, her whole body numb. Then she moved, mechanical and deliberate. She couldn't tell Elias. Antonio had made that impossible. She couldn't call the police, they couldn't stop what was coming. Her only choice was to do exactly what Antonio demanded. She had to destroy the man she loved, to save the brother she'd raised. When Elias returned that evening, triumphant with the news that the Rossini family had agreed to a ceasefire, he found her packed and ready to leave. Imani? He froze in the doorway. What's going on? She forced herself to meet his eyes, to steel herself against the love she saw there. I'm leaving. Leaving? What are you— No, the threat is over. You can come home now, back to the mansion, or I can set you up in your own place if you prefer, but I don't want to be with you anymore. The words tasted like poison. This was a mistake. The color drained from his face. What? All of this? She gestured between them. Us. It was fun while it lasted, but let's be real. We're from different worlds. I was playing house with a billionaire, and now it's time to go back to reality. You don't mean that. He stepped closer, and she forced herself to step back. Imani, talk to me. What happened? What changed? Nothing changed. I just finally admitted the truth to myself. She made her voice cold, empty. I was using you for the money, the security, the gifts. It was exciting being with someone powerful, but I don't love you, Elias. I never did. She watched something break in him, watched his eyes shutter, his face go carefully blank. It was the same mask he wore when conducting business, but seeing it directed at her shattered her heart into a million pieces. I don't believe you, he said quietly. Look at me and tell me the last 2 months meant nothing. She did. She looked him straight in the eye and lied with every fiber of her being. They meant nothing. You meant nothing. I'm sorry if you thought this was more than it was. For a long moment he just stared at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. I see. His voice was ice. Giovanni will drive you wherever you want to go. Your grandmother's medical care will continue. I don't punish innocent people for others' mistakes. Your brother's college fund remains intact. Consider it severance pay. Elias, get out. The words were soft but absolute. Get out before I do something we'll both regret. It took everything in her not to break down, not to tell him the truth, not to throw herself into his arms and beg for forgiveness. But she couldn't. Marcus's life depended on her performance, so she picked up her bag and walked toward the door. As she passed him, she caught the scent of his cologne, felt the heat of his body, and had to bite her lip until it bled to keep from crying out. Goodbye, Elias. He didn't respond, didn't even turn to watch her leave. It wasn't until she was in the car, Giovanni's pitying eyes on her in the rearview mirror, that she finally let herself fall apart. What she didn't know was that Antonio Rossini had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated how well Elias knew her, how thoroughly he'd learned to read her every expression, every tell, every lie. And he'd underestimated the resources Elias Leon could bring to bear when someone he loved was in danger. While Imani sobbed in the back seat of the car, Elias stood in the safe house, his phone already to his ear, his voice deadly calm. Find out what they threatened her with. And find it now. We have less than an hour. The hunt was on. And heaven help the Rossini family when Elias Leone finally caught up with them. Imani made it to her grandmother's house just as the sun was setting, her eyes swollen from crying, her heart shattered into pieces. Marcus met her at the door, his young face creased with worry. Money, what's wrong? Where have you been? He pulled her into a hug. Grandma's been worried sick. She said you hadn't called in days. I'm sorry, she whispered, holding her baby brother tight. I'm so sorry. Her grandmother appeared in the doorway, her frail body supported by a walker, but her eyes sharp as ever. Imani Marie Foster, You come inside right now and tell us what's happened." In the small living room that had been home for so many years, Imani tried to explain without explaining. She'd left her job at the mansion, things hadn't worked out. She was home now, and everything would go back to normal, but her grandmother wasn't fooled. "This is about that boy, isn't it? That Leon boy." Imani's tears started fresh. "Grandma, he loves you. I could see it that day he came here, when he brought that specialist for me. The way he looked at you." Her grandmother shook her head. "Like you hung the moon and stars. It doesn't matter, it's over." "Why, baby? Why would you walk away from love like that?" Before Imani could answer, there was a knock at the door. No, not a knock. A pounding, urgent and insistent. Marcus moved to answer it, but Imani grabbed his arm. "Don't." Too late. He'd already opened the door. But instead of Antonio Rossini's men, it was Giovanni, and he was covered in blood. "Miss Foster," he gasped, nearly falling through the doorway. "You need to come with me. Now. It's Mr. Leon. He's walking into a trap." Imani's world tilted. "What?" "No, he agreed to the ceasefire. He said—" "There is no ceasefire. It was a setup. Rossini wanted you out of the way so Leon would be vulnerable." Giovanni clutched his side where blood was seeping through his shirt. "They have him cornered at the old warehouse district. He's outnumbered 5-1, maybe worse, and he's going in anyway because he thinks they have you. They told me they'd take Marcus." "Misdirection. They never wanted your brother. They wanted Leone isolated, emotional, reckless." Giovanni grabbed her shoulders. "You're the only thing that can pull him back from the edge. If you don't come with me, he's going to get himself killed trying to save you from a threat that doesn't exist." "I don't understand. He figured out you were lying." Giovanni shook her slightly. "He knows someone threatened you. He's known since the moment you walked out that door. And now he's going to slaughter everyone responsible, even if it means dying in the process." Horror washed over Imani. "Oh God. Oh God, no. We need to leave. Now." "Wait," her grandmother said firmly. "Marcus, get the first aid kit. We're not sending her anywhere until you're patched up enough to drive." Her sharp eyes fixed on Imani. "And you listen to me. Love like that, the kind where a man would die for you, that's rare, that's precious. You fight for it. You hear me? You fight." Imani nodded, already moving. "Marcus, stay with Grandma. Lock the doors. Don't answer for anyone but me or Mr. Leon. But Manny, please." She hugged him fiercely. "Trust me, I'll explain everything later. I promise." 10 minutes later, she was in the car with Giovanni speeding toward the warehouse district. 2 other SUVs flanked them, the last of Elias's men who weren't already at the warehouse. "How bad is it?" Imani asked, her voice steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "Bad. He went in with 12 men. Rossini had at least 60 waiting." Giovanni's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. "They're holding their own, but it's only a matter of time. And Leon, he's not fighting to survive, he's fighting to destroy. There's a difference." They pulled up to a massive complex of abandoned warehouses, just as gunfire erupted from inside. Imani's heart stopped. "Stay in the car," Giovanni commanded. "Absolutely not. Miss Foster, that's the man I love in there." She grabbed his arm. "Either help me get to him or get out of my way." Giovanni stared at her for a moment, then something like respect crossed his face. "You're crazy, you know that?" "So I've been told." They moved quickly, Giovanni and 2 other guards flanking her as they entered through a side door. The smell of gunpowder hung thick in the air. Bodies, she refused to look too closely, littered the floor. The sounds of fighting came from deeper in the building. "Elias!" she screamed, her voice echoing through the cavernous space. "Elias! I'm here." The gunfire stopped. For 3 heartbeats, there was perfect silence. Then she heard him, rough, desperate, disbelieving. "Imani." "I'm here. I'm safe. It was a trick. They lied about Marcus. They lied about everything." She followed the sound of his voice, Giovanni close behind, until she found him in the main warehouse bay. He was in the center of what looked like a war zone, his suit jacket gone, his white shirt torn and bloodied, a gun in each hand. Around him, his men were in defensive positions, facing off against at least 40 of Rossini's soldiers. And there, on a catwalk above, stood Antonio Rossini himself, a sniper rifle aimed directly at Elias. "How touching," Antonio called down. "The little maid comes to save her prince, though I'm afraid you're too late." Everything happened at once. Antonio squeezed the trigger. Elias started to move, but he was exhausted, injured, too slow. Imani didn't think, she just ran. Throwing herself forward with every ounce of strength she had, she hit Elias's chest just as the bullet left the rifle. They went down together, hitting the concrete hard. Pain exploded through Imani's shoulder, white-hot and blinding. She'd been shot. "No!" Elias's roar was inhuman. "No!" What followed would be talked about in the criminal underworld for years to come. Elias Leone had always been ruthless, calculating, cold. But the man who rose from the warehouse floor with Imani bleeding in his arms was something else entirely, a force of nature, a avenging angel, death incarnate. His men moved in perfect synchronization with him. Giovanni took out the sniper. Marco and Alessandro stormed the catwalk. And Elias, still carrying Imani, walked straight through the battlefield like he was untouchable. Antonio Rossini tried to run. He didn't make it 10 feet. "You," Elias said, his voice eerily calm as he set Imani carefully down behind cover and turned to face Antonio. "Made a critical error. You threatened her. You made her cry. You made her think she had to choose between my life and her brother's. It was just business," Antonio stammered, backing away. "Nothing personal. It became personal the moment you said her name." Elias pulled out his gun. "I gave you a chance to negotiate, to back down, to live. You refused. And now?" He pulled the trigger. Once, twice, 3 times. Antonio Rossini fell, and with him, the last of the resistance collapsed. Rossini's men surrendered, throwing down their weapons, begging for mercy. Elias ignored them all. He was already back at Imani's side, pulling off his ruined shirt to press it against her wounded shoulder. "Stay with me," he commanded, his voice breaking. "Imani, cara mia, stay with me." "I'm sorry," she gasped, tears mixing with the pain. "I'm so sorry. He said he'd kill Marcus if I didn't." I know, Amore, it's okay. You're safe now, you're safe." He cradled her face with one bloody hand. "The ambulance is 2 minutes out. You're going to be fine. You have to be fine. I can't lose you." "Not going anywhere," she promised, even as darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. "Love you too much. Then marry me." The words burst out of him, desperate and raw. "Marry me, Imani. Let me spend the rest of my life making up for this. Let me protect you, cherish you, give you everything you've ever deserved and more." She tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "Proposing while I'm bleeding, that's romantic. Say yes." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Please, Amore. Say yes." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, always yes." Sirens wailed in the distance. His men secured the warehouse, and Elias Leone held the woman he loved in his arms, refusing to let go until the paramedics physically pulled him away. In the ambulance, as they worked to stabilize her, he held her hand and made silent promises to every deity he didn't believe in. If she survived this, when she survived this, he would be better. He would give her the life she deserved. He would prove that her sacrifice, her love, her faith in him hadn't been misplaced. And in the hospital, 3 hours later, when the doctor emerged to tell him the surgery had been successful and she would make a full recovery, Elias Leone, who hadn't cried since his father's funeral, wept. 18 months later, Imani stood in the garden of the Leone estate, watching her brother Marcus laugh with a group of his new college friends. He was thriving at Columbia University, his full scholarship, courtesy of the Leone Foundation, covering everything from tuition to housing to books. Her grandmother sat in the shade nearby, looking healthier than she had in years. The experimental treatment that Elias had arranged had given her a new lease on life. The doctors now talked about years instead of months, and on Imani's left hand sparkled a diamond ring that caught the sunlight and threw rainbow prisms across the perfectly manicured lawn. She felt arms wrap around her waist from behind, and smiled as Elias rested his chin on her good shoulder, the one that hadn't been shot. The scar was still there, a reminder of that terrible night, but it no longer hurt. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against her ear. "How different life is now." "Better different or worse different?" She turned in his arms to face him. He looked different too, more relaxed, younger somehow. In the months since the war with the Rossini family, he'd started delegating more, trusting others with parts of his empire. He still ran his businesses, legitimate and otherwise, but he'd scaled back the violence, negotiated treaties with former rivals, started building something that might actually resemble a normal life. For her. It was all for her. "Better," she said softly. "So much better. But sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that I'm actually about to marry Elias Leone." "In 3 weeks," he reminded her, stealing a kiss. "And then you're stuck with me forever, Mrs. Leone." The Mafia boss's wife. Who would have thought? The Mafia boss's wife, the Leone Foundation's director of community outreach, and the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. He brushed a curl away from her face. "I'm the luckiest man alive." "Even with all the drama your mother caused about the wedding?" he groaned. "Don't remind me." But she's coming around, slowly, grudgingly, because she knows that if she wants any relationship with her son, she has to accept you. "And the grandchildren you promised her," Imani teased. "One thing at a time, amore." But his eyes sparkled with possibility, although I wouldn't be opposed to starting the practice runs now. She laughed and swatted his chest. "Behave. We have guests." "Since when do I behave?" "Since I taught you that protecting isn't the same as possessing. That love is a partnership, not a kingdom." She touched his face gently. "You've changed, Elias. We both have." "You made me want to change," he said seriously. "You made me want to be the man you believed I could be. And every day, I'm trying to earn that faith you had in me." "You already have." She kissed him softly. "The moment you let me choose you instead of forcing me to stay, that's when I knew. You're not your father. You're not the ruthless boss everyone fears. You're the man who wakes up early to make me coffee just the way I like it, who learns ASL because you're funding a school for deaf children, who cries during Disney movies when you think I'm not looking." "I do not cry during Disney movies," he protested, but he was smiling. "Liar. I saw you during Coco. That movie is manipulative." She laughed, pure and joyful, and he pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her perfume mixed with the garden flowers. This right here, was everything he'd never known he wanted, everything he'd thought his life could never be. Peace, love, home. From across the garden, Marcus called out, "Hey, Manny, Grandma wants to know if you're doing the chicken or fish for the wedding dinner." "Both," Imani called back, then looked at Elias. "Because apparently your family and mine both have very strong opinions about food." "Our family," he corrected. "It's all one family now." "Our family," she agreed, her heart full to bursting. As the sun set over the estate, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Imani Foster, soon to be Imani Leone, realized that sometimes the darkest places held the brightest lights. Sometimes the most dangerous men had the most loyal hearts, and sometimes love really could transform everything. She'd walked into the Leone mansion a poor maid from the wrong side of town, desperate and afraid. She'd leave it a bride, a philanthropist, a woman who'd brought one of the most powerful men in the city to his knees, not through manipulation or seduction, but through genuine kindness, unwavering loyalty, and a love that refused to be diminished by fear. Her story could have ended in tragedy. Instead, it was just beginning, and this time she was writing it herself, with the man she loved by her side, ready to face whatever came next, together.